Hmm. Hello and welcome to Excel at Excel. My name is Bruce Gates, and today we're going to look at formatting, which is basically just a way of saying making your cells look pretty or fancy. But basically, it's about more than that too. It's also about making your data more legible and thus a little bit easier to work with too. So for today's example, we're going to make sort of like a shopping list where we're going to put in some items and calculate the cost and things like that. So we're going to need a column to label items. We're going to need a column that we're going to label cost. We need a quantity, which I'm going to abbreviate with QTY, and an extended cost. Now, actually, I want to put these in a different order here to make things a little easier, like so. And now we need to enter some data because we can't do anything without any data, right? So we're going to have some bananas, apples, pears, and some oranges like that. And we're just going to throw in some random quantities here, 5, 2, 7, 3. Sure, that works. And these costs are going to be very unrealistic, but we're just going to roll with it here. Let's say 50 cents for these. We'll say $1 for these. Pears are going to be expensive at $2 a pop. And we're going to do 75 cents for oranges. Now, already we've got a problem because these are not in currency format. They're in decimal format. So we could quickly go over here and select the dollar sign and make that currency. But I just want to show you some other options that you have. So let me just zoom in here to show you a little bit better what we're looking at here. If we right-click this cell that we want to be currency and change it to format cells, or go down to format cells, I should say, here we have a menu with a bunch of different options where general text, as you see here, is just, general format, and they have no specific number format. You can do number, currency, accounting, all kinds of different things that we'll probably get into at a later date. You can even adjust alignment and font and the border, and you name it, it's there. In this case, we're going to look at currency, and we're going to stick to the American dollar sign here. And the decimal places, we're going to leave at 2 because as far as I know, currency doesn't generally go beyond 2 decimal places. We're also just going to happen to leave it at the default for the negative numbers, but I did want to show you that you have the option to make your negative numbers red or put them in parentheses or make them red and put them in parentheses. But we're going to stick to the standard negative format and we're going to hit OK. Now that we're done with that, okay, that's great. We've adjusted this one cell, but what if I want to apply this to the rest of these? Well, I could have selected them all and done that, but if I adjusted this one cell and I decide now I want the rest of these to follow suit, there's a really fast way to do that, which is just to use Format Painter up here on your main home bar or home screen, I guess you'd call it. So what we do is we select the cell that we want to copy the format of, click the Format Painter button, and then left click and hold and drag to the other cells that we want to be formatted similarly. So once I let go, boom, these are now also currency. Great. You can do the same thing up here. So let's say I wanted to make these headings bold and underlined and centered at the same time. Ooh, fancy. Well, I don't have the rest of them like that. Now, again, I could have selected them all, and frankly, that's probably a faster way to do it, but I want to teach you this idea of the Format Painter, where once we have one cell set up the way we want it, all we have to do is click it, click Format Painter, click and drag, and again, I'm left-clicking and dragging, boom, to adjust those appropriately too. And everything's looking identical and nice. We can even put borders around this and do all kinds of fun stuff. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and calculate these costs. So what we're going to do, we're going to get into a little bit of formulas, but these are pretty simple formulas. So actually, before I get into that, I'm just going to put total down here because at the end of this, I'm going to want to total up all of the prices that we come up with here, just as another example of a formula. And I'm going to make this right aligned so it goes right up against this cell here. So when I put my total here, it's going to just kind of look a little bit nicer. You can even bold it or do whatever you want, but for now that's fine. So to calculate the cost of all these different line items, for example, 5 bananas at 50 cents each, you can probably already guess what that cost is going to be, but let's say you didn't know, Excel can figure it out for you. Every formula in Excel is going to start with an equal sign. No matter what the formula is, you need to start it with an equal sign. You can do a lot of different mathematical functions in Excel, such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. You can even nest things together, and it will follow the order of operations. If you're not familiar with that, we'll probably talk about it when we get more into formulas. But essentially, let's say I wanted to add 5 plus this 50 cents, which in this case wouldn't make sense, but to add, you would use the plus sign. To subtract, you would use the minus sign. To multiply, which is what we're about to do, because we want the quantity times the cost, we would use the asterisk. And if we wanted to divide, we would use the forward slash. But like I said, we want to multiply, so we're going to multiply the quantity, which I've already selected, by clicking it. And then I'm going to left-click the cost that I want to multiply it by. I will then close my parentheses and hit enter. And boom, we have the cost right there, automatically. Now, there's another cool feature with formatting, or I guess you'd call this more filling, where you can fill in series or flash fill. We're not going to get too into those specifics yet, but all you need to know for this particular exercise is if you look at this little square in the bottom right-hand corner of this cell, you'll see that a thicker, or not necessarily thicker, but I guess a black plus sign appears when you get close to it. And that's what we want to happen. We would then want to left-click that and drag it down to the other cells that have data next to them, and then let go. And as you can see, we get the same thing. Well, not the same thing, thankfully, because then we would get the same price throughout, right? But what happens when you do that is it basically takes the information from above it and automatically increments it. So B2 times C2 becomes B3 times C3. B3 times C3 becomes B4 times C4, and so forth. This also works left to right. Now, in this case, it's not going to work very well because, well, it just won't. But if I were to take this same little black box and move it to the right, you'll see that it now takes C2 times D2. So, or I'm sorry, yes, C2 times D2. So there you go. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you here is not the problem with the formula because of my added apostrophe there. The last thing I'm going to show you here is how to sum up all of these prices. There's a lot of ways you could do that, and actually if I zoom out here, you can actually see in the bottom right, if I bring my cursor here, you can see that when you highlight cells in Excel, depending on your settings, I will show you in a later tutorial where you can adjust these settings. You can automatically view the sum of the cells that you've selected, how many things are in the cells that you've selected, and the average of the cells that you've selected, among other things. But again, that's another tutorial for another day. Let's say that just for now, we want to know how much our total bill is going to be for all these bananas and apples and pears and oranges that are way overpriced, apparently. In this case, we're going to hit equals again, because again, we need to start every formula with an equals sign. We then want to use the sum function, which, as it says here, adds all the numbers in a range of cells. Again, we need to use an open parentheses, and what's nice about Excel formulas is that they will give you this little hint about what to do to make the formula work. So here you see number 1, comma, number 2. So you could just go ahead and type in, for example, or click, D2, comma, D3, comma, and so forth. Or you could simply click and drag again, left click and drag. You'll notice that what it does there is it puts a colon in between the two cells. So you could do that manually if you really wanted to. D2, colon, D5, same effect. And again, you need to close the parentheses and hit enter, and you have a sum of everything that you came up with. The last thing that I'll show you here is how to make all the cells, or all the columns at least in this case, automatically fit the contents, because as you can see, we have a lot of extra space on both sides of cost. We don't really need all that room here. Quantity also looks a little bit too big. We can also make this minimized or centered here so it looks a little nicer. Just make things, clean it up a little bit. So in order to make all of these cells, all of these columns, automatically match the width of the content that's in the columns, we would just select the column. You can do this individually, column by column, but in this case, we want to save some time and select all of the columns, and then drag it so your cursor is right like that. So you get these sort of like a cross with two arrows on the left and right. And it doesn't matter where it is. It could be in the middle of these two, or these two, or these two, or at the end. Really doesn't matter. but then just double left click, and it automatically fits everything into the appropriate sized column. That's going to do it for today. I look forward to other tutorials with you in the future, and I hope you'll stay tuned for them. Until next time, take care, and I'll see you later.